Hi class, this is the little video I said I would do for you on the muscle histology. We are talking about skeletal muscle, not cardiac muscle or smooth muscle, but skeletal muscle. These are the muscles that move our skeleton. So let's get started. This is just a little review of the different types of connective tissue that we're going to find in muscle tissue. So here is just a regular old muscle. Muscles are attached to bone via tendons. And we call our muscle cells what? We call them muscle fibers. Remember, these are long fibers. So like sartorius, L-O-N-G, it has really long muscle fibers. From the origin to the insertion, that is the length of the muscle fiber. So here is a muscle fiber in this diagram, and this is a cross section. So when you see this, this is a cross section. They have cut the muscle. So this is a cross section. You are seeing muscle fibers. So all the orange little dots here are muscle fibers. In between the muscle fibers is the connective tissue called E-N-D-O, endomysium, that is between the muscle fibers. This is a more delicate connective tissue. This is areolar connective tissue. And then we are going to make a bundle of a bunch of different muscle fibers, and we're going to wrap them in another connective tissue called perimysium. And perimysium is going to form fascicles. So we got, like, here's a fascicle here, fascicle here, and then we're going to take a bunch of fascicles, wrap them in another layer of connective tissue, a much stronger, thicker connective tissue called epimysium. Remember, epi means on top of. So epi is on top of the muscle. So once you've wrapped it in epimysium, you have created a muscle, like the biceps brachii, for example. But perimysium, remember, peri means around. We are just wrapping a connective tissue around a bunch of muscle fibers to make a fascicle. So make sure you understand that. Endomysium, in between individual muscle fibers. We are going to wrap individual muscle fibers with perimysium to form fascicles, and then we are going to take our fascicles and wrap them in a much stronger connective tissue called epimysium to form a muscle proper. So every muscle that was on your muscle master list is wrapped in an epimysium. So far, so good? So when we look at it under the microscope, we look at the histology, this is kind of what you're going to be seeing. So this is a cross section. It says longitudinal and cross sections. Well, we are only looking at a cross section right here. So all of these red or dark pink structures, these are our muscle fibers. In between our muscle fibers, the white stuff in between our muscle fibers is what? All this white stuff in between our muscle fibers is what? That is endomysium. And then we are going to be putting a stronger connective tissue around our muscle fibers. That is going to be our perimysium to make fascicles. So, and this one's showing you the epimysium. This is going to be on the outer edge that is connecting, that is wrapping around the total muscle. Most of our slides in the classroom unless you happen to get this exact part of the muscle where you're seeing the outer layer of the muscle, most of the time we are not going to be able to see the epimysium. But we'll see lots of perimysium and endomysium. So here we have a close-up. These are the individual muscle fibers again. You can kind of start seeing the nuclei around the muscle fibers. So this is a muscle fiber, nuclei. Here's the nucleus, 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 nucleus. And in between the muscle fibers is going to be, this white stuff is what? Endomysium. And then we are going to wrap a bunch of muscle fibers with a thicker connective tissue called perimysium. Here's the perimysium going around, and the perimysium is making what? This fascicle. So this is just looking at high power at 400x. So here you can see individual muscle fibers much clearer. Here is the nucleus here, and in between the muscle fibers is what? Endomysium. This is going to be a thicker connective tissue. This is our perimysium. Starting to make sense a little bit? Here's another one, skeletal muscle. Here is a muscle fascicle outlined. A muscle fascicle is what? Is what kind of connective tissue is forming a muscle fascicle? Perimysium. Here is the individual muscle fibers. Here is a nucleus. So kind of starting to see it. Perimysium, and it's forming a fascicle. So this whole thing is a fascicle. Muscle fibers, endomysium. Now this was from our class. So this isn't a great one, but it's what we have. All these little dark pink things are going to be our muscle fibers. In between them are going to be endomysium. There's a lot of space. Normally there's not that much space in between our muscle fibers. Here you can see the endomysium looks a little bit better here. And then we're going to have our perimysium that is making a fascicle. So here's a fascicle here. This would be probably a fascicle here. So not a great muscle slide. Here's a fascicle here, but this is all perimysium. These big swaths of connective tissue are perimysium. Now this is showing you a longitudinal section of a muscle fiber. So now we're going to have the muscle fibers long ways. So you're seeing the long cut of a muscle. So the muscle fibers, and here's the cross section. So they're just showing you the difference between a longitudinal section and a cross section. Longitudinal section, cross section. So here's a longitudinal section. So what you're going to see here, remember our muscle fibers are multinucleated. So here are the nuclei. And this is a muscle fiber here, muscle fiber here, muscle fiber here, here, here. In between this white stuff, what kind of connective tissue is in between our muscle fibers? This is endomysium. Now what you're also going to be able to see here, these are striations. Muscle fibers have striations. So when you get to physio, you're going to be learning I bands, A bands, Z lines. That's all in here. But for us, just to know skeletal muscle has striations. Oh, and here are the A bands. The A bands are the dark lines that you're going to see. The I bands are the light bands, and inside those light bands are going to be Z lines. For my class, you don't need to know that. For physio, you will have to know that. But here you see light bands, and dark bands. Dark, light, dark, light. And physio, you will learn about all these bands and how a muscle contracts and calcium, all that good stuff. This is from our classroom. Victoria took this beautiful picture. So this is longitudinal section, obviously. You can see the striations, you can see the nuclei, and the white stuff is endomysium. Beautiful picture, beautiful, beautiful. I just want to show you, when we get to cardiac muscle is obviously the muscle that is in our hearts. It too has striations, but it's going to have these things called intercalated discs. So once you see these intercalated discs, you know it is not skeletal muscle. It is cardiac muscle, and the nuclei are much, much different. So we'll get to that when we get to the cardiac muscles, but I just wanted to show that to you now. The other thing some of you guys get mixed up with is you'll see this and you go, oh, this is muscle tissue. This is skeletal muscle. Kind of looks like it. I see all these things. No, this is dense, regular connective tissue. Number one, there are no striations. This is collagen, no striations. So don't ever get this slide confused with this. They may look similar in that they're a parallel arrangement, yes, but this has striations. This does not. Now, a motor unit. You need to remember what a motor unit is. A single motor neuron. A neuron is a nervous system cell. It's a cell, a single motor neuron, and all the muscle fibers it controls. This will make more sense when we start the nervous system. But each motor neuron, motor refers to it's going to a muscle, because it's going to move that muscle. Remember we said muscle without the nervous system going to it is just dead meat. One of the properties of muscle tissue, it's excitable. Who makes it excitable? Well, it's responding to the nervous system stimulation. And our bodies have these motor neurons, their main cell body, where they have their nucleus in there. It's going to be located in the spinal cord, in a specific part of the spinal cord that we'll get to when we get to the nervous system. But that cell body, the main part of that motor neuron, that nervous system cell, its brain, if you want to call it the brain, the cell body is in the central nervous system. It's in the spinal cord. The spinal cord is part of the central nervous system. Once that motor neuron is told to fire, it says, okay, go ahead and fire. However many muscle fibers that motor neuron is in charge of are all going to fire. So like this red one, we have this motor neuron, the red one, it has, looks like it's only controlling 2 muscle fibers here. Its axon, this is the axon, is what is sending that information, that is sending that stimulation down to the muscle fibers. Now this motor neuron, the purple one, it has how many muscle fibers that it's going to? 1, 2, 3. So this guy is this motor unit. This motor unit is in charge of 3 muscle fibers. This one in charge of 2. Now, most of the time, unless you're having real fine, like here it says, muscles that control fine movement. Like in class I said, if you were threading a needle and you needed real fine motor control to get that thread through that needle, you would only be firing small motor units. You only want to move a few muscle fibers at a time. And those usually have less than 10 muscle fibers per motor unit. Whereas if you want to move your thigh, you are not interested in fine motor movement. You have a big muscle, it's going to have several hundred muscle fibers that its motor unit is going to be in charge of. So if the motor unit that is controlling the muscle fibers of the thigh, when that motor neuron fires, all the muscle fibers that it is in charge of will contract. Think of it like turning on a light. If you have a light switch, and when you turn that light switch on, and there are 2 light bulbs that are connected to that light switch, both of those light bulbs will turn on. Same thing, if you have a small motor unit and you fire that neuron, that neuron, that nervous system cell that's in charge of those muscle fibers, those 2 muscle fibers will both be stimulated and will both contract at the same time. If you have a light switch that is now, when you flip it, it is now turning on 500 light bulbs, they are all going to turn on at the same time when you flip that light switch. Same thing with a large motor unit. If that motor neuron is in charge of 500 muscle fibers, when it is turned on, it's going to stimulate all 500 muscle fibers and they will all contract at the same time. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, a single muscle is going to be that single muscle is going to have multiple numbers of motor units that control it. Don't think that one muscle, say your rectus femoris, don't think only one motor unit controls your rectus femoris. There are going to be multiple motor units that control your rectus femoris. And you know that to be true just in daily life. I went over this in class. If you are going to reach for something on a desk and your brain is saying, I know what muscles I need to pick up that thing that's on the desk, and I know how many motor units I need to stimulate to pick up that thing that's on the desk. Your brain is making all those calculations. So it's going to call into action a certain amount of motor units that are going to a muscle. So what if you try to pick up that thing that's on the desk and you go, oh my gosh, it's too heavy, I can't pick it up. Your brain is going to recalculate and say, I need more motor units to pick that thing up on the desk. And sure enough, next time it fires, it's going to have more motor units that are firing, so more muscle fibers will contract. That's what this statement down here. If you need stronger contractions, your brain, your central nervous system is going to recruit. It's going to call into action more motor units. Hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense. Here's another example. We have our blue motor unit. No, not blue. This is purple. It's only had. Is this the same picture? No, it's not the same picture. Well, maybe it is, but it's a little bit bigger or so. But you can see this motor neuron, a single motor neuron, and all the muscle fibers it controls. That's the definition of a motor unit. A single motor neuron and all the muscle fibers it controls or stimulates, however you want to put it. This motor neuron controls 2 muscle fibers. This motor neuron controls 3 muscle fibers. So a motor unit is a single motor neuron and all the muscle fibers it controls or stimulates. A single motor neuron and all the muscle fibers it controls. And you're going to see this in the histology slides that we're going to be looking at next. So here are the axons. This is just these things that are taking the electrical impulse down to the muscle fibers. So these axons are carrying the electrical impulse. And then let's look at I am going to skip that one. Oh my goodness, I'm not sure why it's not showing the whole slide. Let me move this over here. So when you look at it underneath the microscope, you're going to see they're calling these the motor nerve fibers. These are the axons. The axons. Here's the muscle fiber. And this part here where the axon meets the muscle fiber is called the neuromuscular junction. Neuro is the nervous system and the muscle system where they come together. The neuromuscular junction. Neuromuscular junction. The axon coming from the motor neuron that's sending its impulse to the muscle fiber. Neuromuscular junction. Here we have another picture. The green is showing you the neuromuscular junction. The yellows are the axons. The yellow are the axons. They are carrying the electrical impulse down to the muscle fibers. And then this is showing you, the white is showing you, this is a skeletal muscle fiber. So you will notice they are calling these neuromuscular junctions. Now some places are going to call them motor end plates. Here you see the muscle fibers. Yes, muscle fiber. Axons. Axons are carrying the information down, and where they meet the muscle fiber is going to be the neuromuscular junction. Some places will call these motor end plates. So far so good? Now I want to show you this diagram. Yep. A neuromuscular junction. Nervous system and muscle system come together. Now this diagram, where they have this box, here you can see the axon coming down to meet the muscle fiber. This is your muscle fiber here. Where they meet, where the axon and the muscle fiber meet, that is the neuromuscular junction. Technically, the motor end plate, here they're showing you, here it says the motor end plate, is the part of the muscle, that is actually responding to the chemicals, the neurotransmitters that the axon is releasing. Because when we get to the nervous system, this will make so much more sense. The axon is going to release a neurochemical. That is how it's going to be talking to the muscle. And the muscle has receptors that respond to those neurotransmitters. So technically, the motor end plate is just the receptors on the muscle side, the muscle fibers. I just wanted to bring that up because some students will say, what is the difference between the neuromuscular junction and the motor end plate? This is basically telling you the neuromuscular junction, it contains the motor end plate. It contains the motor end plate. So for my class, I don't care if you call this the motor end plate or the neuromuscular junction. Some professors may, especially in physio, they may have you specify the difference between the neuromuscular junction and the motor end plate. Can you see the motor end plate here? No, it's in there because we know the motor end plate is the part on the muscle fiber. Neuromuscular junction. But then you come to this, it's like, here's a slide. It says the motor end plate. Is this wrong? Well, no, we know the motor end plate is somewhere in there. If you want to call it that, that's fine with me. But you'll always be safe calling it the neuromuscular junction. Here is a single muscle fiber, Here's the axon, and here it is going to the muscle fiber. So you can call this whole thing the neuromuscular junction, and in here will be the motor end plate. But for me, I like neuromuscular junction because you can't go wrong with nervous system, muscle, and where they come together. Neuromuscular junction. Here is a slide from our class. Victoria took this also. Here are the muscle fibers. This is a longitudinal section. Correcto mundo? Yes. This white stuff in between the muscle fibers is what? Endomysium. These guys, these lines are what? These are axons that are coming from our motor neurons. And then this thing here, the pointer's kind of pointing at it here. You see one here, here. Every muscle fiber is going to have its own neuromuscular junction where it comes together with the axon, right? So all these are the neuromuscular junctions. Neuromuscular junction, neuromuscular junction. If you want to call it a motor end plate, I don't care. You can call it a motor end plate. Just kind of know the difference between a true motor end plate and the neuromuscular junction. Well, that is it. So hopefully this helps. We will have our review in class tomorrow, so we'll have these slides set up. Hopefully you'll all look at them. Those of you that can't come to our review, basically these are the slides that you're going to be seeing on the lab practical. you'll be seeing this guy, this guy, and one that shows our something like this, that shows the endomysium, muscle fibers, endomysium, and perimysium in a fascicle. So basically that's what you're going to be seeing on the lab practical. So email me if you have any questions, and I hope this helps you guys.